Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to One on One with DJK. We have promised you on this channel to bring you people who are transformational in nature and have done extraordinary things, ordinary people doing extraordinary things from all over the world. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to speak to someone who is a role model, who is a mentor, who is a friend, who is a big brother. But a quick story: when I was growing up, Frank was already working and he was in the World Bank. And I remember my parents spanking me to stay in school so I can be like Frank. To this day, I'm working so hard to be like you, Frank. And I admire you. I admire what you have accomplished personally and professionally. And truly, I don't say it as much as I should say, or as much as our countrymen in Uganda and women should say. We thank you for what you have done on a professional level for our country, on a village level for our village and our communities. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Dr. Frank Byamugisha to the channel. Hello, Frank. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, Jackson. Thanks for the generous introduction. As you know, I come from a very humble peasant family. My grandparents migrated from Nyachenyi, Katonya, Kayungwe, Rideo. And as migrants, they were looking for free land and they go to the most remote land that was available in Kayungwe, about 1 mile from the, from the Nengo.
Yes.
Which is really very remote. And at that time, it was about 5 miles from the nearest road. So I grew up in a peasant family. However, they were religious and were able to take me through a church school for class 1. Yes. And a primary school from primary 1 to primary 6 in Kashoshwa Primary School, where I had to walk about 5 miles one way in the morning and 5 miles back. And then from primary 6, I joined a Catholic seminary to become a priest, which was not successful. Eventually, I left and joined the high school and found myself at Makerere. And then from Makerere, I did postgraduate work outside, and eventually I found myself a working person at the World Bank. And thereafter, a retired man like I am today.
Well, that's the summary of primary school through university and through your work career at the World Bank. When you were growing up in Kayungwe primary school with parents who really didn't go to school, did you have a choice of what you are going to study, and what inspired you to end up studying economics at university?
I really didn't have a choice. Actually, at that time, my favorite work was to look after goats and cows, and because that was the main source of wealth.
Yes.
Then, because my parents were religious, whenever I went to church, after church, they would collaborate with the catechist to actually give us training. And then in the course of the week also training, and through that process, I was able to complete primary 1. Believe it or not, writing on the ground in the sand.
Yes.
And for homework, doing it on banana leaves. So then from there, we're able to qualify for primary 2 in a government-recognized school, Kashoshwa Primary School. Yes. So really, at that time, I didn't have any ambition of becoming an economist or anything. However, the ambition came up when someone that you might know called Masha, eventually Dr. Masha,
yes,
came to our primary school to address us. And I was so much impressed by him that from there I started taking class seriously. Then after primary 6, I was selected among 5 people from in Cheese County at that time to join a Catholic seminary.
Yes.
Where for the first time I was being taught by Europeans in English. So really that opened my eyes that I could become someone.
Yes.
And then from there, my ambition was to really become a priest for about 5 years. But over time, I realized that wasn't my calling. And I went to high school, did sciences, with an ambition to become a doctor, medical doctor.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and believe it or not, I couldn't make it because I failed biology practicals. I was given a frog to dissect. What I had practiced doing it, and I thought I was excellent at it. I really fumbled it and I failed it. Instead of taking me for medicine at Makerere, they took me for agriculture. And then from agriculture, we had an option of taking agriculture economics in the third year, which I did. Yes. And I never looked back. From there, I focused on economics in Australia and later on in the UK.
Very good. So again, when we are speaking in leadership and mentorship has been something we've talked about a lot. Every single guest I've had here on this TJK Shares has emphasized the role of mentorship. And many of the young people think mentors are the ones they watch on TV, the Kim Kardashians and Mark Zuckerbergs, the Oprah Winfreys. Here you are, son of Chivi, in our own village, who had broken the cycle of poverty and became an engineer and came to Atlanta, Georgia in the United States, who is still living, I think, was your inspiration to stay in school. So I wanted to reemphasize that. You, right now, we could be talking to Father Frank Byamugisha if you had become a priest, which you didn't. But
no, a pope.
Tell us a little bit about your family life. You broke the cycle of poverty and privation in Kayungwe village. You are a married man, proud father. Speak about that a little bit and how you met Innocent, Mrs. Byamugisha.
Well, let me start with how I met Innocent because she's my lovely person without whom I could not be where I am today.
Amen.
I knew her brother, I didn't know her. And when I left Uganda in early 1978 for my master's degree in Australia, at that time I had already known the brother, but not her because I think she was in the secondary school at that time. From there, when I came back from Australia, I found she was a grown-up girl. And, through her brother, I did not have any intention of hooking up with her to become a wife. But eventually, something happened and we developed interest in each other and got married. Now we have 3 children.
Yes.
Mark is our firstborn. Jeremy is our middle child. And Shell is our lastborn. Mark is special to us. He's on the autism spectrum. Excellent in terms of socialization, yes, but with delays, developmental delays, especially in speech and language. However, he's been doing well, especially in the American environment.
Yes.
Due thanks to support, not only from state level, but community level, family level, friends. And through that support system, he's been able to function quite well. He's a very happy person. And we are happy to have him with us in our family. And I'm highlighting this because it's important that God did not create all of us the same way. He created us differently.
Yes.
Human beings, what we have to do is ensure that however way we are created, we do our best to support one another to ensure that we are successful and we lead productive lives.
Wonderful. And I know you spent more time on Mark, and that's something I did also let you know that I wanted us to a little bit talk more about it, because the communities we were raised in still have stigma with anybody who is born with any special needs, whether they are physical or mental. And a conversation I had recently with an expert at Michigan State University, Dr. Awadu, who is from Uganda, has recently introduced the aspect of doing assessments, online assessments, which is something we'll talk about more. So Mark is a very, very intelligent man. Mark is the one who remembers everyone's birthday. Mark is the one who remembers people he chooses to like. I am one of those he loves and likes. And I know also he picks up mail. So once in a while I write mail so he can pick mail that has his name on. So please tell Mark, and I hope this segment right there, he will watch it. Mark B, this is for you. We thank you for being an amazing man you are, and you inspire all of us. So here you are. Shout out to Mark. Jeremy, you are middle one, amazing athlete, wonderful young man who is now a man himself, married recently. And Michelle, perfect, also young woman who is excelling professional. So thank you for sharing your children, and thank you, children, for making your parents so proud. We are all proud of you. Now let's switch back into you finished your master's in Australia. By the time you did your master's, had you got a job at the World Bank, or did the Australia master's lead you into World Bank career?
That's a very interesting question. I really stumbled into the World Bank. I never planned to get into the World Bank because I was not even aware what the World Bank was doing until basically just before I got into it. When I was in Australia at the time, in 78, that was a time when the war to remove Idi Amin was starting to take shape.
Yes.
And indeed, in the second half of 1978, that's when it began. And in April 1979, that's when Idi Amin was removed. Now, this is important because it relates to eventually how I got into the World Bank.
Yes.
I had been basically admitted to Australia National University in Canberra in Australia to do agricultural development economics.
Yes.
Most of my courses were in agricultural development, with an economics learning. However, when I realized what was going on, and at that time, Uganda was not just under Idi Amin with his political human rights abuses. We also had economic issues. The economy had been run down. There was Magendo, where instead of people focusing on production, they were focusing on trade. And so with the developments going on, and with everyone focused on removing Idi Amin, I thought the best way on my part to contribute at the time was to work on an economic framework that would support the rehabilitation of Uganda's economy. So I really oriented my studies towards macroeconomics and developed a macroeconomic model, macroeconomic framework to support the development of the economy. I was helped by the fact that the State Department worked with me because they had participated in the Commonwealth team of experts who had gone to Uganda to help develop an economic program support rehabilitation of Uganda's economy by the Commonwealth countries. So they shared with me their findings together with the database. I built on that database to develop a model. And it's that economic model which helped me to get flying colors in my dissertation, that I was able to get an opening. And look here, the opening was incredible because when I submitted that dissertation, the university decided that it should be published.
Okay.
When that news got around, a neighboring country called Papua New Guinea
Yes.
was looking for Black Africans because it had become independent and wanted people that looked like them being economic advisors.
Okay.
So when they advertised and I applied for a position as a senior economist, the ambassador of Papua New Guinea gave me a job without interviewing me.
Wow.
As a senior economist. So
Yeah.
I went in Papua New Guinea with no experience whatsoever, other than the macroeconomic framework I'd done and the publicity that was going to be published. And I started working, basically learning on the job. Within 1 year, my boss, Assistant Secretary for Economic Policy, wanted to go for further studies. I recommended him for further studies, and I took his job. So I became an economic advisor to the Minister of Finance in Papua New Guinea, which covered responsibilities, including those for taking care of IMF, World Bank, and all these international development organizations.
Yes.
So through the course of that work, I was encouraged by people from the World Bank to apply. And on a piece of paper with a pen, I applied, and I was called for an interview, shortlisted, and offered the job.
Wow. So the young people who call me and you all the time and say, I can't get a job unless I have a connection, then they believe we believe like that. Today, some people still believe like that, but we do know that merit jobs are still available and people can get into them through their hard work and determination, and you are one example of that. So that means your next master's in the UK and your PhD were all done while you are employed.
Absolutely. In fact, I started pursuing my second master's when I was already a principal economist at the World Bank.
So talk a little bit now to the mid-level career professionals who are working. They have full-time jobs, but they want to upgrade their education. Many of them drag their feet. I can't do it. I know now it is even easier than the time you just said you applied to your World Bank job using a paper and a pen. Now people are doing PhDs online while they are sitting in their offices anywhere in the world. Talk a little bit about that balance of keeping a job while you are also pursuing higher education.
Well, actually, in a way, again, that was accidental because
A man of accidents.
Within the World Bank, they took me as a flying color, like someone had great prospects for becoming a great economist. Yes. And my first assignment was on South Korea as a team of advisors on how to come out of an economic recession. Yes. And that was in November 1983. So I did that work as a macroeconomist, initially in East Asia, then in Eastern Europe, including Yugoslavia before it split up.
Yes.
And from there, I thought it would be much easier to develop my career if I focused on Africa. Then I started working on Eastern Africa, and I was appointed as a country economist for Ethiopia.
Okay.
At that time, Ethiopia was, had a dictator called Mengistu who was aligned with the Soviet Union.
Oh, yes.
And the state had taken over land and all properties. So part of the economic work dealt with how to handle land allocation, land markets, and try to rationalize how a market economy could work within a centralized planning system, which Soviet Union countries were following. And through doing that work, I developed interest in land. And then I gravitated from working as a country economist, basically an agricultural economist specializing on land governance. And the World Bank reassigned me to work in that area in East Asia. Then for actually 10 years, I became an expert on land in East Asia.
Yes.
To the extent that I got awarded the World Bank President's Award for Excellence, which actually was celebrated not only in Washington, but also Australia, which was for financing the program,
yes,
as well as in Uganda in 1997. Now, my work in the land was so much admired that I felt embarrassed because I had not done even 2 courses of land governance. I was basically learning on the job, teaching myself. So I decided to go back and do a master's in land surveying.
Okay.
In the course of doing it, I thought it was an opportunity to combine it with economics. So I did a PhD focusing on land titling and economic development. And basically, that's how I've ended up where I am as supposedly a land expert. For fact, I started differently.
Now, for those of you, ladies and gentlemen, who don't know Dr. Byamugisha is a humble guy. He is now underplaying his land expertise for the entire World Bank tenure. One of the questions I was going to ask you was related to how your titles changed while you were at the World Bank, which you just covered. So now that you've covered that part, talk a little bit about your publications. You are the land expert. You have published land policy articles in so many journals all over the world. You have retired from World Bank and continue to be a consultant. I know every African country wants you to be their consultant. You choose and pick the ones you do. That's what retirement does. But talk a little bit about your publications and the books and plug in those who are wanting to learn more about land surveying, land policies. I actually have somebody here at Harvard University who had just asked me about land policy in Uganda, and I told him I was going to talk to you today, and then I will connect you on email. Talk a little about your books and your publications.
Basically, my research interests and publications arise out of my practical work.
Yes.
Because I basically got into land areas through work, not through theory and research.
Yes.
Basically, what I've come up to write about is interpretation, correction, and improvement of work being done in the area of land governance.
Yes.
So my publications have been basically evaluating the ongoing programs. And I was lucky I started with the most successful land governance programs in East Asia. Then lessons I drew from there, I applied to Africa. Yes. And because again, the World Bank gave me an opportunity to cover a region, because in East Asia I was the lead land specialist for the whole of East Asia and Pacific region. I was able to capture data across countries, which many people don't have that opportunity of doing. So my first main publication is Securing Africa's Land for Shared Prosperity.
This report is important because it addresses a dilemma in that Africa has abundant land, 200 million hectares of unused land, while at the same time it has half of its population living in poverty. The report draws lessons from East Asian countries that have developed quite rapidly and customizes them to African situation, but based on recent innovations in Africa. For example, Ethiopia and Rwanda have been able to document land rights, and in a period of 5 years, that has had significant impact on economic growth and poverty reduction. And the aim of the report is to accelerate implementation of such reforms and has come up with a 10-point program. The main central point in the 10-point program is to support documentation of land rights, 90% of Africa's land, so that all the African landholders can have their land secure, giving them incentives to invest in their land, to improve productivity, produce enough food for Africa, and with a surplus for exporting to the whole world, and in the course of it, reduce poverty. It's a 10-year program costing $4.5 billion, which is not a lot of money. If you can, for example, see a country like Nigeria, which generates billions of dollars, $4.5 billion is just a small fraction of what Nigeria gets from oil. So African governments, together with their development partners, should be able to raise $4.5 billion. And with African political commitment, together with government leadership, should be able to exploit the potential of Africa's land in order to eliminate poverty in Africa.
A program for investment and reform, which basically outlines a program to speed up piloting. I call them pilots because Africa has been largely depending on colonial era land laws and practices.
Yes.
So the work we've done really has been to reorient that system towards a more practical, more realistic, homegrown systems.
Yes.
So at the same time, because there was limited funding for land, I outlined, actually I didn't outline, I prepared an investment program for Sub-Saharan Africa, which is still the reference point for development partners, international development partners, and also highlighting the reforms required that need to go with it in order to ensure that Africa's land is secure, that women have equal access to land as men, and that high-level inequality, especially in countries like South Africa, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, is reduced over time, because with gross inequalities in land ownership, we cannot have political stability.
That's right.
As such, they all need together. So that's where my first major publication has been. And then the rest of the publications have really spanned off from that. I wrote a wonderful article after evaluating experiences of Vietnam and China, which actually is still referred to by Chinese and Vietnamese almost every week. I'm called upon to review publications in China and Vietnam, while I'm actually haven't been to China and Vietnam for more than 15 years. So to summarize, I really focus on interpreting what is done in the field, drawing lessons, and applying them to our countries over the world.
So what are the major changes you have seen from the 1990s drawing these land reforms and policies? You can use specific examples for Uganda, where we both come from and both own land. What major changes have you seen from the 90s to now that we can be proud of?
Two major developments, I can say, actually three. The first one is recognition by African countries that the legal systems underlying land that they had in the 90s actually were basically a replication of what they had in the colonial period. So many of the countries have had to reform their legal systems, including the constitution. In Uganda, the 1995 constitution is very radical in terms of land policy.
Yes.
And the laws are particularly addressing two main areas. One, recognizing equality of land rights for men and women, despite our traditions and cultural practices going against them. and secondly, of land, and not just individual ownership.
Yeah,
So now in
miss,
Uganda,
we missed that word a little bit. I think technical difficulties a little bit. Recognizing.
Communal land ownership.
Yes, communal land ownership. Yes.
Yes. In the Uganda Land Act 1998, there is a provision that communities or individuals can form a communal land association as a legal entity, which would establish modalities of managing land, and they can have their land demarcated and registered, given a title,
yes.
communal land association. And by so doing, basically in northern Uganda, we'll be supporting programs to ensure that communal groups, be it tribal, be it a clan, be it a family, can get a title for their land.
Okay, very, very good. So land has been something you've worked on, you've published. All this time you are doing it from United States, Washington, D.C. area. In terms of the Ugandan citizen giving back, I know you have done a lot of work beyond World Bank and full-time job. Talk a little bit about your service above self, meaning you are giving back in terms of serving on NGO boards, founding different. I'm not going to talk about it. I want you to talk about it yourself. I know you also you and Innocent are involved a lot in programs in Washington, D.C., so you can talk about the local, national, and international level.
Yeah, I think I have felt an obligation to give back because given that my parents were peasants, I really would not deserve to be where I am if I do not get help from other people other than my peasants, other than my parents who were peasants. In fact, my secondary school education, high school, and all that was paid through scholarships. And university was free. Postgraduate studies were free. I didn't have to pay school fees other than in primary school. So I really have an obligation and had an obligation to give back.
So it takes a village. It takes a village is so applicable to you. It took the entire village to get you to where you are, and then different scholarships also to go through graduate school.
Yes. So in a way, I'm like the Nyaka orphan students. I wasn't an orphan because my parents, were with me all along until my father passed away in 1975.
Yes.
So I wasn't an orphan. However, I really did not have enough money to take me through school. So I really felt an obligation to give back. And guess what? My first give back was in Papua New Guinea when I got that contract after finishing my master's.
Yes.
The contract was so fat that my first year money, when I got it, I was able to buy land where I'm settled, about 85 acres. And I got some surplus money, and from it, I supported our church to build, roof it completely. They had collected money for bricks. Then I offered pay for the roofing, materials, labor, and all that.
Wonderful.
That was my first giving. Then from there, I think major steps we took were later on when we established the international community of Byamugisha.
Yes.
Basically around the same time as you were initiating the Nyaka, the Nyaka initiative, the Nyaka program. At that time, we came together with others to establish the ICO, International Community of Byamugisha, for which I served as the president.
Yes.
From 2004 until 2010. Part of what we do, and I'm proud of it, was to establish the ICT programs in each of districts, and did that as a catalyst so that others, particularly development partners, and in the case of Kanungu Nyakatare, were able to attract South Koreans supporting Nyakatare. And in the case of Rukunjiri, we were able to attract African Development Bank participating. So that was something that we are proud of for having started. And I hope that we and our other colleagues can keep it going, because it's an important forum for people from Kigezi to be able to support their brothers and sisters.
That's true.
Yeah. Then the second part was being taken on board by your initiative, which initially I thought that you would never be able to put it off. But you did it so well that I had to come running. Even when I was still with the World Bank, I had to come running and associate myself with the great model, the community-based development model on which you built Nyaka, so that at least I can be associated with it and provide a service to our people.
Thank you. And we thank you, Frank. You served on the board. You became co-chair and chair of the board. Your legacy during your time is when we built the secondary school, Nyaka Vocational Secondary School, when you and Janice were both chairs. A school that now kids who are vulnerable can get education free of charge and become mini Franks in the future. And more than 500 students have graduated from that because of your efforts. I also thank you for going in person to inspire kids, for them to hear there is a Dr. Byamugisha at World Bank is one thing. It is another thing to stand in front of them and say, I believe in you, you can do this. So we thank you. ICOB has been such a great organization in terms of gathering people, but also giving back, inspiring people to give back. In fact, I have a conversation with Dr. Mnini Murera tomorrow to try to schedule also a conversation like this for TJK so we can have it on record. We appreciate you. You have involved your children. Your wife is involved in so many different things. What you didn't talk about that I want to bring out is the many students you have paid school fees for. Your siblings who are now doctors and professors, your community people. People in Uganda mostly look at the MPs and politicians, ask left and right what they can do. You have educated so many. If you put them on the road, they will come from here, Boston, until Washington, D.C. So we thank you for investing in education and encouraging more people to even stay in school by encouraging them or giving them a word. Let's switch from a busy man, Frank, a busy professional, a busy giving back, to how do you relax your mind? What are your hobbies when you are overworked? How does Frank relax?
Believe it or not, I relax by reading.
I knew it.
In fact, my wife and Michelle, our daughter, always complain that I read too much, especially on land. I mean, technology is evolving, and opportunities are there to be able to use the current technology to share knowledge.
Yes.
So I really, actually, I feel like professional obliged, but also passionate to do reading and writing. However, if I were just focused on that, my head would burst, or my blood system would burst. So I like relaxing. My home is located near a woody area and an agricultural farm.
Yes.
So I love taking walks in the woods, in the farm, about 4 miles per day. Of course, when I was younger, I would be running with my son, Jeremy.
Jeremy's
now, when he runs, I walk. I can't catch up with him.
Yes.
And I also like sports, watching selected games in basketball, in football. That's why I was excited even about your Michigan State University performance in football.
Yes.
I like basketball. Boston Celtics is my favorite team. Larry from the Larry Bird era, and Robert McHale and Kevin. sorry, Robert Parrish and McHale. When they were playing
Very
with,
appropriate. While I'm recording from Boston, Cambridge, at Harvard University, Celtics is your favorite team. These guys are going to chew it up.
yes, I even have T-shirts and socks Boston Celtics, and
Wow.
yeah, and I was also inspired by your friend Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson and Michigan State and Lakers.
Yes, who used to compete with Larry Bird.
Yes.
So from that time, I've stuck with that team, and I still have it. So I'm able to relax that way.
So you are able to watch some sports. You are able to see. I know the biggest sports person in your house again is Mark B, who checks the weather all the time, and he was invited to go and visit the meteorologist at the station because he watches all the time. But he also knows every score, which team is playing, the names of people who are playing all the time. So you're a sports family. You exercise together. You relax by doing all this. What is next in Dr. Byamugisha's future? What does the future hold? Are you publishing more? Are you starting a university? What should we look forward to next? What's your next chapter?
Actually, what I do is basically taking a step at a time. I've been focusing on writing papers which get published as peer-reviewed articles in journals. From there, I hope to write a book, basically capturing where Africa is in terms of land policy and what it would take to be able to come to a level where Africa would be comparable to European countries in terms of land governance. So that's one part. And then another part might be to collaborate somehow about my biography. Someone to write about my biography. But, you know, I don't have any firm commitment on all these things. But what I do is do one thing at a time.
Yes, we plan, God laughs, but in this case, I know, Frank, when you put something in your head to do, you do it. Your record has shown it, your past has shown it, and we all believe in you and look forward to a long, long, long life of hundreds of years as you continue to inspire all of us. The last question I will ask you, which I've asked every guest, is what advice would you have given yourself at 18 years of age?
Man,
advise young people. The Nicolas says Jeremy is beyond those years, but you know so many young people are going now to pour in and listen carefully. What advice would you have given yourself between 18 to 21 years of age?
I think at that advice I would have given myself at the time is actually be more ambitious than I actually was at the time. Tell you the truth, when I was in the university, somehow I always wanted to compare myself with the average person in the class. I would always be looking at people from Monterey and other, big schools.
Yes.
Somehow people that would not make it in life because they were superficial. And as a result, I didn't have an ambition of doing well enough to do postgraduate studies. Then come second year, I realized, I'm performing well enough to actually do qualify for postgraduate studies. So when I put in a little extra effort, it became obvious. And actually one of the professors advised me, said, look, if you can get upper second in agricultural economics, we'll have more than 3 scholarships for you can choose to go Australia, UK, or US.
Yes. Wow.
And that's when I doubled the effort and was able to put in effort to get an upper second. Now, if I had become ambitious from first year, probably I could have got a first class. Now, my advice to kids is that really they should take life more seriously. Focus on whatever they are doing and ensure that their eyes are on the results. Don't be let down by peer pressure. Just focus on your studies. And focusing does not mean that they should become ambitious. I know today's kids want to complete, buy a house, buy a car in their first year.
Yeah.
No, focusing on results that are achievable, that are realistic, and stay ambitious, but don't be too ambitious. That's what I would have advised myself, and I advise today's kid.
Very good. Wow, that's a great advice. I hope everyone listens. Frank, we thank you. And the advice you give, I know you lived it. There's one fun fact that many people don't know, but because I've been to your house many times, I can share this. Talking about kids wanting to buy a car, they don't just want to buy a car now, they want to buy the Range Rover, the Mercedes, the newest class. And I remember the first time you told me the story about your Volvo, which you kept for many more than 30 years?
28 years.
28 years of one car. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a PhD holder, World Bank head of department, international renowned land policy, driving one car for 28 years. And many of us end up wanting to drive the biggest, newest car because we want to impress other people. So the advice you are giving young people, I am a testament that I have seen you live that life of humbleness. You've heard him, you've seen him. We thank you for sparing time to speak to us today, and we know the best is yet to come. We wish you good health, we wish you good thinking, and wait for that biography and an international book on land policy that will change the lives of so many. Any last word you would like to say before we close?
Yeah, I would like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you, to chat with you. Not that I haven't had opportunities to speak to you, but to be able to reach out to your audience, and especially audience of young people, audience in Uganda and Africa, that hopefully when they see us chat, they can be inspired to be not just like us, but much better than us, because we want them to do better than we have done. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.